September 17th, 2024. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart using NinjaTrader 8. This is what the chart looked like today, and this is how I drew it out. It kind of had a rally in the pre-market, consolidation, another step up, then a very, choppy sell-off that occurred here. And you can argue there was kind of a trading range in here, but I couldn't really find a good trading range to contain everything. And if it did, it wasn't very useful. So I worked with these smaller trading ranges. So I found a few trades. I took two of them, was profitable on both. And then there were a few more setups that were kind of scattered throughout the day. It was economic data that came out at 5:30, which is about right here, which was the core retail sales, but it didn't really seem to move the market in any particular direction. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the charts right now. I also want to point out that the V contracts of the ES as well as the NQ are starting to get more volume than the U contracts, because the U contracts, which is the previous ones, are expiring on Friday. So there's only about 3 more days left. So this is what the pre-market. Pre-market spiked up, break of the green channel, tested the new high, and hit this consolidation range. And then the first setup I found was actually very, very early. It was actually within the first minute of regular trading. You have this break consolidation. Now, I actually had this trading range a little bit higher. See if I can move it up without causing too much trouble. So it's actually a little bit higher here. I saw as a new high. It's a first entry long pullback, a second entry long. Second entry long is a possible trade. Clearly, it's bouncing off some kind of support right here, and there's enough room to the high. I also like that this signal bar isn't good for the second entry long, but the trigger bar is pretty nice that it engulfs the signal bar, and it kind of pushed up. The EMA is kind of holding support, so there was a small violation here and it pushes through, but I was going to skip it because this is about 50 seconds after the market opened, so that made me just a little more cautious because it's early. Unless this is just an absolutely beautiful setup, the only way that would have happened was if this didn't break through. This was still engulfing, and this was also green. Just a whole lot of things stacking for the trade. But this was just a decent setup, but a little early for me, so I left it alone. I'm going to go ahead and drag this trading range a little bit lower to where I eventually had it. Okay, so then prices kept moving. There was a failed breakout of this trading range because the high of the trading range was actually lower. I had it here, then later I dragged it up to here. There's a failed breakout. It came down. It's the first entry long pullback, second entry long. Second entry long. So it's a bounce off of this clear support that has been respected previously. Not exactly this really firm 57, 18, 25 line, but a zone of about a couple of ticks. So that's already good enough to know that, hey, this is respected pretty well. There could be a reaction. So I saw a push down, break, one attempt down, maybe a second attempt, but I wasn't that worried about the second entry so much as it was in a trading range and it was coming off the bottom. The signal bar is a doji, so I wasn't that thrilled about it. Then the trigger bar confirms the first entry long, second entry long. So I waited for the trigger bar, this guy, to close. And then it opened. I entered at the high of the original signal bar here, plus 1 tick. So I was able to get in on when it opened, it swept, picked me up, and then quickly got the profit target. I moved my runner to break even. Actually, I moved it to 1 tick above break even, but I got a little bit of slippage, and so it actually ended up being break even here. And it's not too bad still. Then prices were just kind of consolidating. Let me just kind of drag it like this. Consolidating. I didn't really see any good setups. Then I saw this second entry short, and I actually thought it was another good trade. So you have this trading range. It made 1 attempt down, pretty much like 2 little pushes up, another attempt down. After the break, this orange down channel, it tested the low. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe the down channel has played out. It could be a failed breakout of this trading range because it failed breakout, but it failed to get back in. So at this point in time, I'm thinking maybe failed breakout pullback. It's starting to move. It creates this big visual first entry long pullback, second entry long, potentially big visual first entry long, second entry long failure. I also saw this more as a new low here is a first entry short pullback, second entry short. Now this one is a little more aggressive. And I was thinking the EMA is starting to hold prices down. It's starting to show a bias of going in the bearish direction. And I thought this could be a possible channel developing because I drew this as a trend line, this as the bottom part, but I didn't color it in yet because I wasn't quite sure. But I did like that it's pushed up and then reversed down, didn't break below, so it was a little more of a risky trade. I decided to reduce my risk by keeping it 10 ticks, so I actually entered higher up, hoping it would fill me. So it actually opened here, did a bunch of things, pushed up. I dropped in my order when it was pushing back down, got filled, and on the same, pretty shortly after, I got my profit target, which is the 1 tick trade. And then I moved my break even to 1 tick below my entry, so it got taken out pretty quick, so there was no runner here. It was also a rather aggressive trade though, so I think in hindsight, it should have been skipped because it's a little ambiguous. You have a break of this orange, tested low, downtrend may have played out, could be pushing back in, one attempt up, push down. This could be a second attempt up, or it could just kind of reverse and push back up. It depended on the strength of this down channel, which isn't fully confirmed yet. So it was a little bit more of a risky trade. As you can see, if I entered later, I may not have gotten out because if I entered 1 tick below here, this is a 57.14.25 and this is 57.13.25. So if I entered right at the lows here, it's doubtful I would have gotten my 1 point scalp and I probably would have had a losing trade. So it was a little more risky. I tried to reduce it by entering on a limit order slightly back to reduce the risk. But in hindsight, I should have left this one alone. Prices then continue moving up, moves up on this green channel, breaks, tests a new high. You only get like really first entries. Technically, you have a new low here. Well, you have a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, count resets here, because this one's actually lower than this one. So I count as a new low here, pushes up, get a first entry short here. You have a second entry short here, but this isn't a very good signal bar, and you didn't know that this bar was going to follow up that strongly. So no trades there. It hits this consolidation area. I saw this as a triple test potential trade here because here you have 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch. In real time, you see this. You also see that the EMA is starting to hold support, but you have technically a new low here, new localized low. First entry short, pullback. You have a second entry short. This is only this is an 8 tick candle. One push up, pullback, second push up. This green up channel has broke, tested the high, and it's still followed up with 2 additional attempts. So it's a little ambiguous. I would figure that this is probably at a top of a range because it tried 3 times, moving back into range, enough room to the EMA. But I decided to, I thought it was kind of like 2 legs up. It just wasn't, I didn't feel that good about it. So I left it alone. Then it creates this lower high. Now this is also a possible trade. The thing is, I thought this trade was actually more aggressive. If you weren't in on this trade, I was doubtful that I should enter on this trade just because it confirms the second entry short, new low, first entry short, second entry short. It's a decent signal bar, but now you don't have as much room because the EMA is starting to crush the price action. In other words, it's starting to squeeze it. So I'm stuck between this potential resistance and this potential support. So there's less room now. It's a little less appealing on this, but I did like that it moved up, I think 1 tick and then flushed down. So a possible trade, but definitely a little more aggressive. And to be honest, I had already gotten this trade and I skimped out or squeaked out on this trade. So I wasn't being too ambitious at this point. Then prices move down. It gets a little choppy. There was no news that I could see that kind of created this choppiness. Pushes up. Technically, you have a new low here. Say first entry short, second entry short. Second entry short is not really a good signal bar. You do have a lower high here, but the lower high here, other than the break, and it's 1 attempt up, it did push down. It's a really large bar. It's 17 ticks, so it's a little bit larger than I'd like, even if I tried to back it up here. If I backed it up and try to enter on a limit order, then I'm clearly above the EMA, and I don't really like when prices move back above the EMA if I'm going short, just to expect it to push back down. So there's no trade here, no setup. Prices move down on this yellow. There's an overshoot here, pushes up on this orange one. There's a slight overshoot here, and I saw it as 1 attempt up, pushback, second attempt up. So this is, I think, it was also an aggressive trade, but I considered it there. Like, so it's a trade if it's aggressive. The thing I liked about it, it has 2 key entry points. It's a break, first attempt up to test the highs after the break this orange, and this could be the second attempt. So you see this in real time. Also, you see this as a new low. You have a clear first entry short, pullback, second entry short. This same candle confirms your second entry long and confirms your failed second entry short. because it was first entry short, second entry short. It's reversing. It's going back up. Bulls are potentially coming back in. The thing I thought it was aggressive is the EMA doesn't act. It's not really helping. It's very, very flat. This is clearly just chopping through the center of it. But if you took it as 2 key entry points, potential test of this push up, you could potentially jump on it, but I just felt it was a little more aggressive for me, so I left it alone. I mean, I will say that the EMA, since it's just flat, you couldn't use it as key entry point. But had it been slightly different, like the EMA had crushed and pushed down here, and these guys were EMA was still flat, but let's say it was riding, acting as support, then you could count it as a third key entry point. Then I think it would have been more realistic and less aggressive. Then prices continue moving. I drew this as a potential trend line, so I had 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch. I saw this at the time, and I wasn't really sure if this is a trade here because it's just too choppy. I did have this yellow one going down, and when you had a first entry short, second entry short, at this time, I was thinking if this had only been red, then it might be a potential trade here because EMA is holding prices down. It looks like it's falling in this yellow down channel, but unfortunately it's green, and the follow-up candle, now it's just too late to try to chase this because you're potentially running into a support region right here. So I had to, I marked it because I felt or thought about it, but I didn't really think it was worthy of a trade designation, even an almost trade. Prices then continue moving down. Let's recenter this. So I'm trusting that this is acting as a decent support, this red channel or this red trend line, but I wasn't sure where the bottom was. So I was playing with it at different times, like maybe here, treating it as a fail breakout at the time in real time when I was here. Saw it as a first entry short pullback, second entry short. The second entry short I thought was actually a possible trade because I like that it moved a couple ticks up. I think it's actually only 1 tick, then flushed down, engulfed this entire candle. So I like this first entry short, second entry short, break of this orange down channel, wants to test the low, first attempt, second attempt. Plus, it already pushed up twice on a measured move. So I thought this is a possible trade, decent setup. And then if you missed it, it creates another opportunity right here with a lower high confirmation of second entry short. EMA is clearly acting as resistance now. You have, after this break, then you have a lower high, really good signal bar. This is kind of a large signal bar though, because it's about 12, 13, 14 ticks. So it's kind of big, but I thought if you miss this opportunity, maybe this is worth taking. Prices then move. It starts chopping downwards very gradually, so I couldn't really trust any second entries here because it just feels too tight. Breaks out, and at this point, this is where I actually dragged the lower end of this slightly down to, I had it right here. So it almost touches here, kind of touches, kind of touches, kind of touches here. You have a first entry short pullback. You technically have a second entry short here, but it's actually first attempt down. This is just kind of in the noise, so I consider this more of a second attempt down. Unfortunately, it's above the EMA. I wanted a lower high to feel confident, lower high below the EMA, but it also had a failed breakout of this red down channel, which isn't, I couldn't trust it yet because it didn't really have that very many clean touches. Granted, it's 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch, but it broke through. So it's a little hard for me to say, but I did see it as one leg up. Hits this consolidation area, and this is just choppy noise, something I'm not experienced enough to, navigate. So I just stayed out of this. So I made 1 attempt up. Looked like it was kind of 2 pushes down. Then it made a second attempt up on a measured move. So I actually like that. And then I saw this setup. Excuse me. And it's kind of a possible trade because it's a measured move up. It hit the top side of this red down channel, just acting as resistance. It's a new low. You push all the way up. It's a first entry short, push back, second entry short, but it breaks and kind of makes a matching high. Then it comes down. Then I saw this lower high. So there's kind of a lot going into this. It made 2 very distinct legs up, right? After this failed breakout, when I saw these 2 legs so far apart, there's enough room for this to push out. And then I wasn't as concerned as a failed breakout or a matching push out over here after this attempt. So break of the orange up channel, tested the new high, came down, flushed really strongly down. As it's printing, it's coming back down through the EMA. So I'm not really thinking there's going to be a failed or an overshoot on this side corresponding to this at this point. So it kind of made me think this is here, potentially, maybe this is actually a little bit lower here and there was no fail breakout because it looks really clean. In which case, this lower high, it sets up, it's pretty nice. I'm thinking this is the first attempt up, second attempt up. You'd have to chase it and jump in on this just at the right time to follow down with this because you didn't break through the EMA yet, and then you finally do. So it's probably a possible trade. You'd have to be very quick and aggressive on it. And I was thinking the bias is coming back down because it's clearly pushing down right now. And this is acting as resistance. But this was a kind of a rather quick move that, you know, it opens here. You'd have to drop in your order here. This is only a 11 tick risk bar, or 11, excuse me, a 9 tick, 9 tick candle. So 1 tick above is your 10 tick risk. So it would have been, worth a shot. I had wished that this candle actually closed super bearish, like at the lows, or at least if it looked like this, be pushing below the EMA. Then I would have felt a little more confident taking a trade right there. Then prices move down. It bounces, kind of creates found the bottom, and it pushes back up. Break of this yellow up channel, test the high. It looks like it's just kind of consolidating now. It made 2 attempts down again. And then here create a second entry short. This looked appealing, but I had to kind of hold my enthusiasm. The reason being is, so you have a new high, say first entry long, second entry long, or you can see it as a big visual first entry long pullback, second entry long, maybe a second entry long failure. Clearly you do have a new low here. It's a first entry short right here when it broke below this guy. Then it actually pushed above and came back down. So on the life of this candle, this is the signal bar and the trigger bar at the same time. This is a first entry short, hidden second entry short. Hidden second entry short with a really nice close, engulfing the previous bar, but it also made 2 measured moves down already. It gave me pause because I may or may not be at the top of the range. It's a little ambiguous right here. I like that it engulfed it, and I like that it moved 2 ticks up and then engulfed it. The problem is every bar before was engulfing the previous. So like starting from this guy. So you have this bar, this guy engulfs this previous bar. This green bar, you could argue that it engulfs this red bar, and then finally this red bar engulfs this green bar. The problem is it's also going up, down, up, down. This next bar could it be a push up? I have no idea. It felt the widening of the price action is giving me pause. Plus, if this was a trading range, I'm not the highs, I'm not the lows, I'm kind of drifting in the center. Again, the EMA is acting just horizontal, so it's not really helping me. So the bias is unclear. I really like this, but I couldn't justify or convince myself that there's a short trade here. Of course, then it opens and it pushes through, and I just had to watch this go without me, but that's okay because I wasn't really in tune to even take this trade. You technically have a lower high here, but it's also riding along the support. So am I still in a trading range? I have no idea. Then prices continue moving. It gets really choppy all the way into the close because this is where the close is. So I was looking here, and this price action is kind of slow. And then this is kind of where the last 10 minutes is. Right here, I will admit that I was starting to tune out because I did see a new low here. So a new low, first entry short, second entry short, count resets, first entry short, second entry short, decent signal bar. It's really big though, and it's above the EMA. And it only has 1 hour left in trading. And I was just grateful for my 2 profitable trades. I wasn't looking to try to squeeze out any additional profit here or any additional trade out of this. So then it kind of chops around and then it rallies into the close. So it's kind of how the market looked like today. It was rather interesting. A few trade setups scattered throughout. There was surprisingly a lot of clean 2-legged measured moves that occurred, but unfortunately I couldn't capitalize on all of them. So hopefully that was helpful.